All right. Here we go, back again on the other side of the coin. All right, welcome back to the other side of the coin. It's not a live stream, it's a pre-recording, but I wanted to do this with Zach Lowy. He's back on the channel, plethora of knowledge from all over the, European football or any other sort of football all over the world, to be honest. And I just wanted to have him back on the channel to talk about our recent sort of connections with Tchouameni, Boubacar Kamara. There were some links with Camavinga as well. And Zach's just someone who's so well across Liga. I thought it would be very, very good to have him back and get his perspective on some of these players and then kind of work out which particular profile kind of suits us, and then talk about the Declan Rice situation, the price and whatnot in and around this whole thing, and why Ligue 1 seems to be producing so many great midfield talents out there. So without further ado, Zach, my man, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be back on the show. I think I've been on like 3 or 4 times by now, and yeah, super excited to be on again. Yeah.
Brilliant. It's always a pleasure to have you on, Zach. You're especially breaking the lines. You guys are doing so well. It's just wonderful to see the plethora of footballing knowledge that gets put into that particular website. Let's get straight into this, Zach. Chelsea are very interested in including a midfielder this season. I mean, that's been the narrative since the transfer window has opened. You would have seen Billy Gilmour has gone on loan to Norwich as well, which kind of makes you think that something must happen in this particular area with the likes of Kante, Jorginho and Kovacic, who are out-and-out midfielders at the moment. There's talks about Ruben Loftus-Cheek maybe staying, but whether he has a big role, we don't know. He may go on a loan as well. So there's a bit of a question mark there. That's why I think we are looking for a bit more depth. Before I get to asking you some of these league sort of midfielders, I want to give you the picture as to what the situation is like and the profile of midfielders that we have. And then I'll get your input in regards to some of the profile of the midfielders that we're linked with. And then we'll get your perspective as to who could be the best fit for what Chelsea's looking for. So first of all, Zach, we've got Kovacic, Jorginho and Kante, as I said, 3 out-and-out midfielders. Kante, as you know, box-to-box destroyer, loves to win the ball up front, interception king. I wouldn't put him down as a great ball-playing midfielder. And then again, that's not his job in our team. He's to do all the other things. He's an absolute engine. Jorginho is probably a very unique type of a midfielder for us, who sits deep and literally is the metronome of the team. Key to the build-up, one-touch passing, keeps the team moving, the tempo control. And when you're a possession-based footballer, he's so crucial to our game. Kovacic is a bit of a hybrid, I'd say, someone who's very good with carrying the ball, dribbling from deep, but at the same time does have the ability to work with Jorginho and be very useful in the build-up. He's got great vision in terms of passing, but once again, he's a bit of a hybrid. The particular midfielder that we're kind of been linked with and the narrative that's been provided to us is that we're looking for a sitter, someone where we can somewhat change the system, which is at the moment 3 at the back, 2 double pivot, and the wing backs, and then 3 up top. We're looking to somehow have maybe a single DM, a lone DM, and then have another extra attacker, and maybe go away, or maybe even a double pivot, but take away a particular defender so we can use in the attacking area. So that's why we've been linked with Declan Rice recently, who can sit deep and literally fall into the middle between the 2 centre-backs and become like an auxiliary defender, and act as I suppose, the Marquinhos role that PSG had under Thomas Tuchel. So now what I want to ask you, Zach, with the midfielders that we linked, first of all, let us know the profiles of Boubacar Kamara, Tchouameni and Camavinga, and then let us know from your perspective, who do you think kind of fits that profile? And do you think that's what Chelsea should be going for.
Yeah, I mean, it has been kind of a weird transfer window from Chelsea's point of view. You know, they have gotten rid of quite a few promising young players, Valentino Livramento departing to Southampton and so on, whereas, you know, they have struggled to offload deadwood, you know, veteran players on big wages such as Tiamoe Bakayoko, Ross Barkley. Obviously, you know, that's easier said than done. But so yeah, it remains to be seen what happens then. But yeah, I definitely would imagine Chelsea continuing to pursue a center forward as well as a midfielder. I don't think that they would have, loaned out Billy Gilmore if that wasn't the case, because I definitely think that Gilmore is, you know, while he didn't get much in the way of first team minutes last season, he's definitely closer to being a starter than, you know, the likes of Danny Drinkwater, Ross Barkley, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, so on and so on. And I do think that it probably suggests that Chelsea are looking for a sitting midfielder. I mean, stylistically, I think that when you look at Chelsea's squad, you know, you've got players such as Kai Havertz, Hakim Ziyech, Calum Hudson-Odoi, Christian Pulisic, Mason Mount, Timo Werner, you know, a plethora of attacking midfielders. And that's not even considering the fact that Chelsea may very well end up getting a center forward such as, you know, Romelu Lukaku, Erling Haaland. Nobody really knows yet. But so I definitely think that because of that, I think that Chelsea will probably go for more of like a defensive midfielder player who's more comfortable to sit back and do the dirty work in midfield. So yeah, looking at the profiles of Eduardo Camavinga, Boubacar Kamara, Aurelien Tchouameni, you know, three very promising midfielders who, you know, have been born and bred in Ligue 1. I think that the player who would make the most sense of those three is probably Boubacar Kamara.
Wow,
which is a bit ironic considering the fact that, you know, he definitely has the least like hype and the least suitors out of those three. But yeah, I mean, considering them, like looking at all those three. Okay, so you've got Kamara and Camavinga, two players whose contracts expire in 2022. Tchouameni, I believe, I'm not sure when exactly his contract expires. I know that he joined from Bordeaux in January 2020. So, like, I would assume it would be probably 2024, 2025. I would definitely assume it would be, like, a comfortable position for Monaco where they, you know, definitely won't be bullied in to selling him for a lower rate. Whereas, you know, Marseille, on the other hand, Marseille have they've splurged quite an amount of money for a team that won't be playing Champions League football next season. They, you know, and that they still have plenty of work.
By the way, Tchouameni's contract expires 2024. I just had a quick look.
2024. Okay, so you know, still a pretty comfortable position for them. You know, 3 years. That's definitely comfortable for Monaco, where they won't be bullied into selling at a decreased rate. Whereas, for example, Marseille, you know, they still have plenty more business to be done. They've, you know, reports are they're going to go for Polarola as well as a few more players, and they've already spent a good amount of money. So they do need to sell players. You know, they've lost Florian Thauvin on a free transfer, and yeah, I'm not sure what other big departures. I mean, Thauvin. Like losing Thauvin obviously gets his wages off the wage bill, but it's still I'm not sure what other big like departures they've had to balance out their incomings.
Is the reason to get rid of Boubacar Kamara is it purely because of the contract situation, Zach, that he is on his last year of the contract? I mean, if he's tapped, because it seems like Thomas Tuchel, as you said, he is the one who's most likely fits our bill. And apparently Thomas Tuchel is keen on this particular player because of his knowledge from Liga being in PSG. I mean, why aren't other clubs in and around trying to get this particular player if he's touted so highly? And at the same time, how come Marseille are not looking to keep him as well?
Well, Marseille, I think they're trying to sell either Boubacar Kamara or Duj Kaleta Sarr or both. I mean, I think that in an ideal world, I don't think there's any doubt that Jorge Sampaoli and Pablo Longoria would do everything they could to get Kamara to extend. But I don't know. I think that he sees, definitely he sees greener pastures. I remember like a few months ago when L'Equipe released the top 10 salaries for each team in Ligue 1, and like I'm pretty sure Kamara was like 9th or 10th. He was incredibly low on the wage bill. So I would assume that like in a way he would have felt disrespected by that. I forgot what exactly it was, but he was definitely, he was not like in the top 5 at all. And like when you consider the fact that Marseille have not had a great team like in the past few years, I mean, I think that's definitely, I could definitely see why he'd be offended. And of course he's extending, he's approaching the final, he's in the final 12 months of his contract. So that is an incredible leverage point for a young player. I mean, we've seen just how much that's paid off for the likes of, David Alaba getting a king's ransom from entering that. So I don't think it's obvious why he'd want to leave. I think that Marseille have been desperate to renew him, but they've been unsuccessfing. So I think that Kamara will end up trying to force a transfer, and I think they will end up trying to get it. But yeah, it is pretty peculiar, honestly. I feel like part of it has to do with like there's still not really a consensus over what Kamara's best position is, because he did come through like when he came through the Marseille academy and into the first team like 2-3 years ago, he was a center back. He was this highly regarded center back, and then
by the way, I'm just looking at the transfer market website. I just got that out on the side, and it shows that he can play either right side or the left side of centre back as well, and then obviously the defensive midfield. I can't believe he's only 21 as well, Zach. Like he's very, very young at 1.84 meters, so he's fairly tallish, 6 foot plus. It's definitely an interesting prospect, and transfer market has got his value at 37 million euros. Obviously, he's not going to go for that much, considering he's on his last year on the contract. So it definitely is an interesting prospect from a particular player that can also play centre back.
I know quite a few. I follow quite a few Marseille fans, and a lot of them have definitely like lamented the fact that they've been resigned to the fact that Kamara isn't going to extend, and that he's going to leave either on a free transfer or on an incredibly cheap rate. And they've really lamented the fact that like the coaches that have managed him, such as Rudy Garcia, and Andre Villas-Boas, mainly just they didn't use him as a center back, which I think is pretty interesting because like when you look at all of the French center backs that are going for like crazy money, and deservedly so, Dio Upamecano, Ibrahima Konate, Jules Koundé will probably be the next one. They're going for a lot of money. I definitely think that like you kind of have that premium in a way. It's sort of like, I guess it's sort of similar to English players, young English players in the Premier League. There's almost like a premium attached to French center backs just because like of how good they've been in recent years. So I do think I have seen like a lot of Marseille fans who regret the fact that he hasn't been used there more, which is kind of ironic considering the fact that he's been played as a defensive midfielder, and he's been frankly one of the best defensive midfielders in Europe, in my opinion, over the past few years. He's been just really intelligent, and I think that in many ways, I thought it was a masterstroke to see Andrés Villas-Boas converting him into that position, and I think that it definitely paid off. And it definitely paid off in the 2019-20 season when Marseille finished second. But now, you sort of are faced with, okay, well, not many teams want to pay for this guy who is a half center back, half defensive midfielder. Like, why couldn't we just played him as a center back? But yeah, it is interesting. I know that Kamara, he definitely hasn't had like many concrete offers. I think that like Milan and Monaco have been probably the two most interested clubs at this point.
Just on that, Zach, just
Yeah.
on that, the whole Monaco situation, and I
Right.
want to now sort of give you a different flavor to this whole discussion. We've been heavily linked with Tchouameni, and now you would have recently heard the Jules Koundé deal seems very, very imminent, and apparently Jules Koundé's agent is the same agent as Tchouameni. They have the mutual agent. And the funny part was there's been some talks that Peter Cech a couple of weeks ago apparently went to Monaco to see Tchouameni's agent. And then now we're in advanced talk about Jules Koundé because of the same sort of agent. So, and there's been also talks, Zach, that apparently, as you just said, Monaco being interested with Boubacar Kamara. And there seems to be a bit of a domino effect that's happening where Monaco may be going for someone like Boubacar Kamara, and then Chelsea comes in with someone like Tchouameni. I mean, let's talk a little bit about this situation and your thoughts around whether Boubacar Kamara will also be a legitimate sort of replacement for Tchouameni, and then would Tchouameni fit Chelsea's, the midfield search and what we're looking for? As you said, that's someone who can sit. Recently, Cesc Fabregas has said that he's had high praise for Tchouameni, that this particular player can play anywhere in midfield. So what's your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense. They have the same agent. I remember watching them at Bordeaux, and, two highly rated talents. But I don't know. I don't personally think that Kamara would be a replacement for Tchouameni. Considering the fact Kamara is definitely much more of like a kind of a holding midfielder. Tchouameni is a lot more of like a box-to-box midfield child, right? So, and I would in some ways consider him a lot more similar to Camavinga in that regard, while being different players. I think that Tchouameni, is a player who, he can break up play. He can win the ball back and launch counterattacks, but he's also going to be driving forward, and pushing forward and dribbling. In many ways, he's definitely a complete like box to box midfield dynamo. So I think that if Monaco, and this is a team that, I mean, they're definitely, I consider them as a team that will challenge for the title this season. They're a team that have a very smart sporting director in Paul Mitchell, and a very smart recruitment team. I just don't think. I'm not saying that they wouldn't sell Tchouameni, especially if they end up not qualifying for the Champions League. I believe they play Sparta Prague in a few days. I'm not sure. I think they play Sparta Prague in the qualifiers. So, like, obviously, not qualifying for the Champions League would be a massive blow for them, and perhaps make them a lot more desperate to sell someone. But with that being said, I just think that, like, I can't see Monaco. I think that if Monaco do sell Tchouameni, they will replace him. They will sign a replacement. I don't buy the fact that Kamara is a like for like replacement for Tchouameni. And I think
how much of a big player is Tchouameni for Monaco? Obviously, they're going to be trying their best to qualify in the Champions League, as you said. Is he going to be a huge loss for that particular team if they were to let him go?
Yeah, I would say it'd be a massive loss. I mean, there's an argument to be made that he was like, a top 2 midfielder in Ligue 1 last season. I'd probably say him and Benjamin Andre would be my top 2 last season.
He ended up winning the French Ligue Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, I think.
Yeah, he's absolutely massive for them. So, he is essential for them. And given the fact that he can play in multiple systems, whether playing in a back 3, which is definitely what, Nico Kovac has, preferred in the latter end of the season. I also think that, the fact is, I think that Kamara could easily slot into that back 3, considering the fact that he isn't like, I'm not 100% sure if he's your guy if you're playing a back four, but in terms of a back three, I think he'd make a lot of sense playing next to, potentially I probably Benoit Badiashile and Guillermo Maripan. I think that would make a lot of sense. Maybe throw in Axel Disasi. I don't know. But, I mean, I think that Kamara's versatility makes him an attractive option for Monaco. There is that possibility. Well, okay, so Marseille don't want to, if they could, they would obviously sell him to Milan or before they would sell him to, Monaco.
Like another rival, I suppose.
So, obviously, I think that they will want to be, charging a premium in that respect. But with that being said, I mean, Marseille's situation makes them a bit desperate to sell. And especially, I mean, you've already lost Dovin on a free transfer. And Kamara would be a much bigger blow in regards to, losing a player on a free transfer. But so it's a bit tricky. But yeah, I mean, Tchouameni is absolutely massive for Monaco's hopes of challenging and potentially winning the title. I mean, they're building a very impressive team. Wow. Monaco, they recently just signed another midfielder, actually, Jean Lucas. There's some speculation over whether Jean Lucas actually could be a contingency plan to Tchouameni. I think he would make a lot more sense as far as contingency plans go, as for Tchouameni's potential departure than Kamara, because he's more of a box to box weapon. So that could be a clue. I mean, Jean Lucas joining from Lyon, that is that. But yeah, Jean Lucas coming in. Trying to see who else. Myron Boadu of AS Alkmaar.
Yeah, I saw that recent. Joined. Yeah, that's a recent one that's joined from, I think, from the Dutch league.
Yeah, they're building a very impressive team, and I don't see why they couldn't at least challenge. I mean, considering the fact that they were in absolutely incredible form during the second half of the season, I think that this is a very impressive team, and Monaco know from experience as well. If you wait it out and, maybe end up winning a Ligue 1 title, they know from experience that you can definitely sell your players at much higher rates. We saw from that summer with Bakayoko, Mbappe.
Yeah, Fabinho, Mendy, Mbappe.
So they know from experience that, look, if we just manage to keep Tchouameni and, either make a deep run in the Champions League or potentially win the Ligue 1 title, I don't think either of those are necessarily are necessarily out of the they're definitely in the realm of possibility, and especially looking at PSG's loss to Lille in the Coupe de France final. I mean, obviously that was an incredibly weakened PSG side, but I definitely don't think that. I think that PSG will be the favorites, but I don't think they're going to be the runaway favorites, because this team has a lot of issues. They haven't really managed to click under Mauricio Pochettino. So I definitely don't think we're going to be set for, the same dominance that we've seen, for example, under Tuchel or other coaches in recent years.
No, 100. It's very interesting to hear about Boubacar Kamara and Tchouameni's situation from you. And we will, as I said right at the end, we will talk about as to who probably is most likely. Just quickly, before we talk about Declan Rice and whatnot, because I want to hear your thoughts on this. Eduardo Camavinga, obviously, he's been linked with Man United as well, but he's another name that's been linked with Chelsea. I mean, what's your thoughts on this particular profile? Looking at his, stats now from Transfer Market, 18 years old. I mean, it feels like he's been around for a long time. His contract expires next year as well, as you said. And he's an absolute out and out, either a centre midfielder or a defensive midfielder. Market value at the moment, they're saying in Transfer Market 55 million, but I think that'll be a bit of a stretch knowing there's only 1 year left on the contract. Just quickly, your thoughts on this particular player and his profile and whether he could possibly fit what we're kind of looking for in the midfield.
I like Camavinga a lot. I mean, I remember watching his, I don't know if it was his professional debut or his Ligue 1 debut. I think it was against Monaco. And like from that moment, I knew that this kid was going to be big. He's a player who, is really a complete profile. I don't think that he would, like, if you're trying to chain him to a defensive position, I don't think that gets the best out of him personally.
Right.
I think that, like, he's a player who, like, we've seen it in previous, like, there have been times where the Rennes manager Julian Stefan tried to position him in like a holding role in a six, and it just did not really work out. And like typically we saw his best version like thriving kind of as a like in terms of like a middle role, like sort of a box to box role, whereas like playing definitely ahead of Steven Nzonzi, who would be the holding midfielder, and right behind Benjamin Borisov, who was the more attacking midfielder. And I think that definitely sums up what Camavinga is as a player. He's a player who, isn't going to be your starting defensive midfielder, or shouldn't be your starting defensive midfielder, but also shouldn't be your starting 10. And I think that like there were a few games actually in the U21 Euros group stage where he was used as a 10, and it did not really work out. But he's definitely a player who is capable of he's a solid ball winner. He's really good at winning the ball back and launching those counterattacks. But at the same time, he's also really solid at just driving forward, evading pressure, and winning fouls. He's so hard to win the ball back off of. But yeah, had a bit of a down season last season. But with that being said, this kid is far from a one-season wonder. It's clear to see just how much of a unique talent he is. Rennes have stated that they want 100 million euros. Obviously that's not happening. But I think that they will end up getting closer to. I would expect them to get close to a 50 million euro figure.
Wow.
Just because, look, this is a kid who's incredibly talented. 50 million. That's probably optimistic, but I think that it's not unrealistic either. This is a kid who has a lot of interest from him. Unlike Kamara, I must say, he has a lot more interest than Kamara. The likes of Real Madrid, Manchester United, Chelsea. Pretty much every team under the sun is following this kid. So like I don't see why. And worst case scenario, okay, he leaves on a free transfer, but he could still help Rennes qualify for the Champions League, which in of itself would be absolutely
a huge thing.
And completely comparing Rennes just they played in the Champions League last season for the first time in their history. They actually played Chelsea, I believe. And I think that qualifying for the Champions League again, it would be absolutely massive for them in terms of obviously in terms of financials. So you have to balance that to the cost of missing out on a 40 million, 30 million whatever transfer for Camavinga, but also in terms of attracting players. And that's been something that they have frankly struggled with. I know that, I remember last season when Rennes were in the midst of trying to find a replacement for Eduardo Mendy, who was headed to Chelsea, and they tried to sign Alphonse Areola, and he rejected them and decided to go to Fulham and get relegated. So he decided to play for a team that barely made it to the Premier League and looked pretty certain to get relegated, instead of a team that was going to play for the Champions League in his home country. That just says all you need to know. So I do think that I think that Camavinga would, obviously not getting a transfer fee from probably you're the best academy product in a generation or two from Rennes Academy. Obviously that would be a massive blow, but you do have to value that and balance that against, okay, well, what happens if we keep him? You know, do we make a cup run? Do we finish in the top 3? You know, you definitely have to balance that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. That's fantastic to hear from you in regards to Camavinga, Boubacar Kamara, and Tchouameni. Let's now talk a little bit about Declan Rice. Obviously, he's been the number 1 selection for Chelsea. Apparently, Thomas Tuchel wants him. Chelsea wants him. I want to know your thoughts on Declan Rice as a player, and the hype. Obviously, being an English player probably gets a lot of hype as well, but maybe not. Maybe he is genuinely that good, I suppose.
Right.
I want to get your thoughts on his links with us, whether he fits that sort of scenario of a sitting midfielder, and then tie it back to whether you think he is good value for money or someone that we've talked about in the French Ligue, in the likes of Boubacar Kamara and Tchouameni or Camavinga, a far better value for money.
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken about it before. I mean, Declan Rice, I think he isn't worth 100 million euros. I believe that's what West Ham want for him. He isn't worth 100 million euros, but he is worth 100 million euros for West Ham. And I think that's a distinction that a lot of people fail to recognize. Same thing with, you know, Jack Grealish, who will probably join Manchester City in the coming days for, I believe, a British transfer record of, I think there's £100 million or so. And so, yeah, I mean, the same thing goes with Harry Kane and Tottenham. You know, he may not be worth that much money, but he's worth that much money to them. Same thing with Zaha, you know, at Palace. There are really so many examples I could list. So you do have to look at the facts. You know, Declan Rice has been playing regular Premier League football since he was, 18 years old? Maybe 19? I don't know. And he's, you know, definitely emerged into one of the best ball winners in Europe. He's still incredibly young. He's a starter for England. He is, you know, a player who has helped West Ham consolidate their status. I mean, and nearly make the Champions League last season. Really so important. So, I mean, I think that 100 million euros for Rice, it is obviously incredibly steep because of, but I mean that is the challenge. That is the paradox that comes with buying young, promising, Premier League proven English players. I mean, Ben White is a perfect example. Like, there is absolutely no way in a market where, you know, the likes of Mohamed Simakan and, you know, Ibrahima Konate are going for far less. Like, there is absolutely no way that Ben White is worth 50 million pounds. Like, and that's no disrespect.
It's insane.
That's no disrespect to White. It's just like, are you kidding me? Like, this dude was playing in the Championship 2 years ago, and, you know, like, but and I mean that it just tells you how, even as clubs continue to recover from the pandemic, the premium on English players and Premier League proven players that are young is still so high, and, you know, for good reason. The reason is they know that clubs will still pay that, even with COVID-19. I mean, I think that obviously we can go into Brexit and the implications that it has, but I mean, I think that with regards to Rice, I would personally, if I was Chelsea, I would not be paying 100 million for Rice. I would personally.
I mean, I think West Ham's looking for about. They're saying it's 100 million, but 80 million as well seems to be what they're going for.
80 million would probably do the trick. But, like, I mean, Rice, I think he has 3 years left on his deal.
With a club option of further 1 year extension.
So then he has 4 years left. So he has 4 years left on his deal, because obviously, if he is still a West Ham player at that point, then they'll obviously, you know, exercise that. But I mean, I think that Rice, you know, obviously he's shown that he's not willing to renew his deal, but he's also not going to, you know, pull a Harry Kane and sit out training, or at least we don't think he will. I don't think he will. I think he'll be respectful about it. But I mean, he will eventually get his move. It's just a matter of time. And I think that West Ham, the fact is he has 4 years left, so they are well within their rights to demand a king's ransom for him. But personally, like, I understand that. I don't. There's no problem with West Ham demanding like that much money for him. But personally, if I was in charge of Chelsea, I'd be like, okay, fair enough. We'll look at other options. Like, I think that going for someone along the lines of Boubacar Kamara, Manuel Locatelli, Tune Koopmeiners, there are really so many options that I think would improve Chelsea and would not cost a fortune. I mean, I think that from Chelsea's point of view, you can get similar production value out of like a player who costs like a fifth of the cost that Rice is going to come for. So I think that they need to, frankly, Chelsea, if you're going to be spending that kind of money, it should be on an attacker. I think either Erling Haaland or Romelu Lukaku, because like, if there's any position where you need to, where you really can't afford to be a cheapskate, I guess is kind of a bad way of putting it, but like, if there's any position where you should be overpaying, it's for an attacker. I mean, we've seen that with Paris Saint-Germain and Kylian Mbappe. Take Mbappe, compare that with what Real Madrid have paid for like Vinicius Jr., Rodrigo, Luka Jovic. That's more than what PSG paid for Mbappe. And we've seen how much, like, there are certain guarantees that come with that, with buying that proven attacker. Even with, for example, with Chelsea's purchase of Kai Havertz, I mean, I think that Havertz had a difficult first season, obviously, but he has been showing in recent months just how good of a player he is. And I mean, I'm super excited to see Havertz, how he does at Chelsea. I think that he can definitely establish himself as one of the best players in the Premier League this season. And I think that's probably maybe the only benefit of Chelsea not buying a center forward this summer. I mean, obviously still a month left to go, but I think the one benefit is that Havertz could get a chance to thrive in a central role, and I think that we've seen his best football come from there at the moment. So, we'll see. I do think though that if Chelsea want to be spending over like 80 million, which is what it would take to get Declan Rice, they should be spending it on a center forward though.
100% agreed, man. 100% agreed. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Zach's provided all the information that he knows from Liga in regards to Boubacar Kamara, Tchouameni, Camavinga, and his final judgment on the whole Rice situation is that in regards to the price, and he understands why West Ham is asking for a king's ransom because of the contract situation and whatnot. He's got a lot of time still remaining there. Rice will eventually get his move, but at the moment, West Ham's probably in the right to ask for the kind of price that they want. And from a Chelsea's point of view, probably just doesn't make sense to spend that much money on a particular defensive midfielder. As Zach said, you'd rather spend that money on a striker and not be cheap in that area because that's better value for money. Zach, thank you so much for your time, my man. Just a quick shout out to you just before you go as well. In regards to this, just a one-liner from you, Zach. Who do you think is going to be, more the midfielder that's going to probably come to Chelsea from the three that we've talked about? Who do you think that Chelsea's probably going to land?
Out of Tchouameni, Kamara,
and Camavinga.
And Camavinga. Ooh, that's a tricky one. I mean, I think it'll be. I think I've seen the most interest from Trump to Tchouameni's standpoint, but I think if I had to pick any one of those three, I think it would be Kamara, because because Tuchel knows him from his time in Ligue 1. And I think that he's, definitely the cheapest option. Chelsea, from what I've seen this past few months, they don't seem in a position to be, they're definitely like trying to not get they're definitely not trying to overpay or in any degree. So yeah, I would probably say Kamara. I think his profile makes a lot of sense as well.
Brilliant, 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 my man. Thank you so much for your time, Zach. Everyone, check out Zach's socials in the description, which will be there, and follow him on social media. Check out the Breaking the Lines, the website with so much knowledge of football there. So check all of that out, and make sure to smash the like button if you've enjoyed this conversation. And if you're here for the first time, subscribe. Until next time, everyone, take care.